Good evening, everyone. We're going to call to order the City Council meeting of March 16th, 2023, 501 Main at 5:30 p.m. Can we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a roll call?
Crenshaw,
Here.
Alteid, Garcia, Altman,
Here.
Helenthal, Andrews,
Here.
Tillman,
Here.
Bryant,
Here.
Greenwald,
Here.
6 present, 3 absent.
Item number 4, Mayor's correspondence. Friday, March 17th, yay, St. Patrick's Day. My favorite holiday. The American Legion is serving corned beef and cabbage starting at noon. Rascal's Bar, Pub and Grill, St. Patrick's Day bingo. And if you dress to win, you can dress Irish to win a prize. That starts at 8 p.m. Dr. Getwell's St. Patrick's Day party and the Band of Judah will start playing at 9 p.m. And the Cellar has a comedian for St. Patrick's Day at 9 p.m. On Saturday, March 18th, 2023, there'll be a macrame art class at the public library starting at 11 a.m. The Knights of Columbus annual St. Patrick's Day celebration with Irish food and McNamara's band that starts at 5 p.m. And they are going to be followed by a company called Teehee's Comedy Club. L Train's Bar will have a fundraiser for the Humane Society, and you need to bring a bag of dog food or cat food or any kind of pet food to donate. And there is a program going on, and it is $20 admission. Then I encourage you all to stop by Dunnigan Shamrocks on the River, which is on 4th Street here. It's a new Irish bar that opened up this week. We have Timbers Edge on 7th and Main, which is a company that does personalized printing. We have another company called Heart and Soul Designs, which does painting for smaller items, not exactly like Lost Canvas, but like for door hangers and gifts for your parents, gifts for Mother's Day, that kind of stuff. Sweet Sally's is is a ice cream bar, and apparently ice cream with alcohol too. But it's got one side that's family friendly, and the other side has a bar in it. So it's on 7th and Main, and the Blue Umbrella Bakery opened up across the street here on 4th Street. Those are 5 new businesses on our main street in Keokuk that have opened up this past month. So that's a great tribute to our Main Street people and a great tribute to the city of Keokuk. And of course, as always, shop local, eat local, drink local, Keokuk first. Item number 5, citizens' request. During citizen request, if you have something that you'd like to talk to us about, please come to the pulpit, talk in the microphone, state your name and your address, and let us know why you're here, and also try to keep it to around 5 minutes. If there's more than one person that's talking about the same thing, try to keep that 2 different subjects or 2 different ideas about the same thing. So if I have anybody for citizens requests, please come forward.
My name is Dustin Cackley. My address is 3186 Middle Road. Couple of events and projects that I'm going to be involved in. March 29th is Vietnam Veterans Memorial Service out at the old section of the National Cemetery. Mayor, you'll be getting a call to come speak at that, if you haven't already. That'll be March 29th. June 14th is Flag Day. I was approached by a member of the Hamilton City Council. His name is Tommy Buckert. I don't know if any of you know him. He had a family member that was involved in this Flag Day thing that they did in Davenport on the Memorial Bridge. They had a boatload of volunteers come and span the bridge holding the American flag. And he thought that would be an awesome idea to bring to Keokuk and to help put us and Hamilton on the map as doing something really cool. We have access to 75 flags. So I plan on hitting up all of the community organizations like the Oddfellows, KC's, the Lions, the Elks, to get the word out and start lining up volunteers for that. The event will be from 11 to 1. We're planning a cookout, so I mean we're going to make it a big a deal as we can to celebrate our flag that a lot of us veterans hold very dear. The final thing that I wanted to talk about is this. I don't know if any of you know. Maybe you do. Maybe you don't. This community is losing a lot of events that we have going on. Rolling on the River is in jeopardy of going away. The Big Dam Street Festival is in jeopardy of going away. And I've kind of made it my a mission to bring back Puckashetuck Days. So I just wanted to get that out there, and I'm going to start putting this together. I've got already the makings of a committee for this, and I have in my possession a scrapbook that I was given by Kirk Brandenberger, the tourism guy, and he got that from Macon, which was a driving force for Puckashetuck Day. So the groundwork is there, and I just want it to be known that I'm going to be hitting up a lot of people for volunteers. Thanks.
What is that?
Oh.
I don't know what it is.
Thank you for asking. So Puckashetuck Days, it was a big celebration when I was growing up as a kid. That's one thing that I look forward to every fall was that. there was a parade, there was concerts, there were events, community events. Puckashetuck, what that means, it has something to do with the river, the rapids. It's a Native American term for something about the river and at the foot of the rapids or something like that. I do have an email out to the Standing Bear Council. I guess that's a Native American group that does a lot in this area. I got an email out to them asking them to help educate me on what exactly that means. And I want to make that not the focus, but I want that to be at the forefront of this thing. So does that answer your
It
question?
helps, yes, thank you.
Okay.
Is
Uh,
tourism going to help?
Well, with all the things, I mean, you guys had Kirk here grilling him about something. I don't remember exactly what that was, but I think they're going to be in the business of helping promote it, but I don't think they're going to be in the business of helping me put this on. But I have had a conversation with him about helping promote it. Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. My name's Marty Fox, 618 Franklin Street. And the article in the paper about the 6th Street buildings prompted me coming here tonight. I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to hopefully protect my interest in the city of Keokuk. I've been involved in the family-owned 150-year-old business and running it for the past 45 years. And between the federal government and the city, I've never seen so much danger in it in all my life. It's scary. The federal government's hammering us, and you guys are fixing to hammer us and even hammer more, because all these property taxes and stuff that's going to be the reevaluations you're doing, it's not going to be enough. And why do you want to be in the real estate business? Why do you want to be, according to you guys, you got 619 and 623 in 2017, 625 and 629 in 2018. And then you attempted to get somebody to develop it in 2019. Why do you think you can't get a developer? It's the same reason you shouldn't try and develop it. It's not the time. I think, unless I'm wrong, if you take a look, the city owns like somewhere around 100 properties in this town. Why? You should have legislation with teeth in it to hold the owner's feet to the fire, and not the city and the taxpayers take over the responsibility of this stuff. We're not going to be able to afford to live or do business in this town. It's going to cost, it costs a heck of a lot to move a company. But, you know, my biggest competitor is China. All the other American manufacturers of our products went to China, and then they went out of business. But between China and our own government, federal government, and now the city, wow. You know, if you could concentrate on the businesses we got here and, you know, developing all this stuff in these apartments, it's not going to bring anybody here unless you got a decent infrastructure. They drive down one street and they're going to turn around and leave. I don't understand it. And all this getting into all this property, and you know, you got the carbide now. You got the hospital and the bridge. That bridge is what, $250,000 a year loss? Why do we keep that? Why do the taxpayers pay that? We got to stop someplace. You guys got to concentrate on the city and quit trying to be a realtor and all this kind of business. I know you're not going to pay a darn bit of attention, but you're going to keep losing your tax base. And then you're going to be in trouble, big trouble. Then where's your police department, your fire department? You know, when, I don't know, the city payroll comes out of the city taxes and et cetera. But when you have to make a payroll every week or take it out of your own bank account, it makes a heck of a lot of difference, and you want to protect that. We're short on people now because there's people that don't want to work, but normally we employ 27 people, and I want to protect that company for my son and my grandchildren. But the way it's going, we're not going to be able to afford to stay here because, next year you're going to have more. It's just been it's just been the way of things for the last 10 years or so. And it all started 20 years ago. Everybody's seen it coming and never done nothing about it. Never done anything about it. And I'm not here to criticize. I'm here to protect my interest. And that's what you guys are for. Worry about the city and get out of the real estate business. Thank you very much. Oh, they've done a great job of cleaning up 628. I thank you very much for that. They got that bad cement block fence down to ground level. Thank you.
Dorothy Cackley, 620 J Street. I have a few questions regarding the building known as the SID Center at 1417 Exchange Street. First question is, what is the income from that tenant?
Present income is $4,800 a year. We've just signed a new lease whereby the city would receive 1/2 of the new rent. The new rent would be $30,000 a year. We have an agreement with KEDC where they get half to help market the facility, and then we get half to help make costs.
The current lease rate is $12,000 a year.
What's that?
12,000.
Right, but what we receive is, what I've got budgeted to receive is 40.
Well, but I'm saying as though she asked the lease rate, not what we receive as a city.
Right.
Okay. Does the city get the 4,800?
Yes,
Thank you. But the entire rent is 12,000, if I
Yes.
understood the two interactions.
Correct.
correct.
Okay. What are the annual expenses on the building?
I don't have the exact number for you, but next year I believe we're budgeted around $92,000.
Okay. And next year's lease was going to be,
Was going to be, in totality it's 30,000 and the city is going to receive half of that.
15.
And it's calculated at $4 a square foot, which is market rate.
I'm just interested in total amounts. And you said it was 92,000, not 9,200.
No, 92,000, yes,
Okay.
approximately, give or take.
Is there any other income besides rent?
No, not at this time.
So looking at 15,000 on the plus and 92,000 on the minus side, who here thinks that's a wise investment? Is there any way that I can be provided the sum total of monies invested in the development of that building since 2016? I understand there were some grants. One was a very sizable one, but grant money versus city investments.
Yes, I can get that to you, hopefully tomorrow, if not on Monday.
Okay. By email, maybe?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Thank you very much. I think putting this in black and white in front of you of what it's cost, what the income is, what the outgo is, and whether it's a good investment or not will help you in determining your actions on the 600 block of Main Street. Thank you.
Do we have any more citizens' requests? Then we'll move on. Item number 6, the consent agenda. Minutes of the regular city council meeting and council workshop of March 3rd, 2023. Minutes of the Civil Service Commission of March 4th, 2023. Police Department Captain Certified List. Police Department Sergeant Certified List. Cash receipts and treasurer's report for February 2023. Resolution approving a liquor license for Hy-Vee Fast and Fresh, 3001 Main Street, effective March 17th, 2023, Class B retail alcohol license. Resolution approving a liquor license for Angelini's, 1006 Main Street, effective April 1st, 2023, Class C retail alcohol license with outdoor service. Resolution approving a liquor license for the Elks Club in Keokuk Lodge, number 106, 2200 Lincoln Avenue, effective April 1st, 2023, Class F retail alcohol license pending dram and fire inspection, and motion to approve the bills and transfers listed in the registers number 5328 to 5330. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda, including the consent agenda?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item number 7, motion to approve the initial reading of an ordinance amending code section 9.08.010 Iowa Code, adopted by reference to facilitate the enforcement of traffic laws in the city of Keokuk. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
The section of the municipal code 9.08.010 covers traffic enforcement and does not conform to state code on traffic enforcement. As such, citations written under our code are enforced as state code violation, and a greater amount of the fine goes to the state. By adopting the state codes by reference, a majority of the fines will come to Keokuk. I think it was pointed out that this is not an increase in the fines. It's just that means that the citations we write, more of the money comes back to the city of Keokuk than going to the state.
Any further discussion?
I had a question. By doing this, does this mean we're gonna have to present more of this to the city attorney to work on?
I've spoken to the city attorney. The arraignment is on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock, 1:30, and he plans on being there.
He knows the expectations.
Yes.
It's very minimal.
Yep.
Just making sure.
Any more discussion? I'll need a roll call.
Crenshaw,
Aye.
Garcia.
Aye.
Oltmans,
Aye.
Andrews,
Aye.
Tillman,
Aye.
Bryant,
Aye.
Greenwald,
Aye.
Do I have a motion to waive the second and third reading of this ordinance?
We have 7 here? Yeah, okay. I was just discussing whether or not we had the constitutional supermajority. We do have 7 council members here, so in order to waive the second and third readings, there has to be a unanimous vote to do so.
Has the clerk approved?
So I don't have a motion?
Yeah.
Did you make a motion, Ross?
No.
No, okay.
Okay. So we'll move on. Number 8, consider resolution approving a grant agreement with the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
The city has been awarded a community project funds through an earmark by Representative Miller Meeks. The award is being administered through the Department of Housing and Urban Development. The amount is $960,000. The attached agreement is with HUD and commits us to all requirements under the grant. One requirement is for an environmental review. We are requesting an exemption from the review as their rules for the review apply primarily to housing projects. If we are still required to complete the review, we will push for the minimum necessary as we're reconstructing an existing roadway. As a reminder, this is the $960,000 pledged towards South 18th and the Road of Honor.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item number 9, consider resolution setting a public hearing on the proposed fiscal year 2023 to 2024 property tax levy. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
The state of Iowa requires us to hold a public hearing on certain proposed property tax levies for the upcoming fiscal year. The staff recommends April 6, 2023 at 5:30. I want to inform the council and the general public that this is not the total levy. The state requires us on just certain levies that they feel need extra emphasis. And again, we must hold the hearing, and staff recommends April 6, 2023 at 5:30.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 10, consider resolution approving grant agreement with Iowa Economic Development Authority. All those in favor, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The city has been awarded a community development block grant of $25,000 through the Iowa Economic Development Authority. The grant is to be used for planning in a targeted neighborhood for housing, infrastructure, and quality of life. Once the plan is completed, the city can submit up to another $1 million in CDBG to complete the plan.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Item number 11, consider resolution directing the acceptance of a proposal to purchase $4,995,000 amount subject to change, general obligation capital loan notes series 2023D, and approving the form and authorizing execution of the note purchase agreement. Do I have a motion to approve?
Second.
Tim Oswald is here tonight to kind of review with you the results of the sale.
So I put in front of you a page full of numbers, and there'll be a test when we're done. But so the borrowing amount is $4,995,000, and I thought I would start by explaining why that's not $5 million, since I think in your mind you were thinking this is $5 million. This is a game I play with the rating agencies. They went in their fee schedules. The break point in their fee to the next highest fee is $5 million. And so it doesn't oftentimes make sense to borrow $5 million and pay them $3,500 extra in their fee or so. So we always try, and if it's 5, we try and go a step below, and so we can keep the rating fee in that category. Does that make sense? Okay, so the bonds were sold today. On the front page is what we call sources and uses. How's the money going to be available to the city? $4,987,000 would be available to the city for spending on the street program this year. $63,000 of expenses. That's the rating cost, the legal work, and my firm's cost. $39,000 to the underwriter for their cost of buying and then selling the bonds to investors, and $22,000 to the insurance company who's guaranteeing the repayment of the debt when it comes due. Doing okay? The next page is just the payment schedule. This will be what ends up in the budget in final form. The next page, I thought I would explain interest rates for a moment, and let me back up a step. You did get your rating affirmed at the A category. A is kind of middle of the road rating category, so that's nice to have done. And I should have pointed out at the beginning, with the bonds being sold, the average interest rate on the issue is 3.82%. That'd be helpful to understand that going into these numbers. But just real quick, and then I'll answer any questions. Bonds, quite often a buyer of a bond insists on having a relatively round number for the interest rate. So for this issue, all of the bonds have the interest rate of 4%. Now, that does not mean that the bonds were actually sold to an investor at 4%. So this is where the games play a little bit. But if you remember buying a house and the mortgage broker said, would you like to pay a point to buy down the rate on your loan? That's just a math exercise. And the reverse is also true. If you can pay a point to buy a rate down, you can buy a point to buy a rate up. And so what we see, and it's fairly common with certain types of investors, banks particularly, is part of their strategy for managing their money, tend to like to pay a point or more to buy the rate up. And I'm kind of agnostic on it. It's fine. I care about what's the actual rate I'm, effectively borrowing at. So on that page, you'll see a lot of numbers, but the second column shows the amount that's due in each year. The third column shows you the rate. They're all 4%. The fourth column shows you the yields at which an investor is actually going to earn the money. So for example, the first bond is due in 2025. That investor will earn an effective interest rate of 3%. Now they're going to get paid by the city a rate of 4%. And in exchange for that, they're giving you up front 102% of what you'll pay them back at the end. So $195,000 bond means that the city gets $198,000 in proceeds. As I mentioned, it's a fairly common approach. I realize that it's maybe seems somewhat unusual. It's fairly common, and I'm looking at that column that says yield. That's the one I care about when I look at pricing, because that's the effective rate that the city's actually going to pay. Questions? The last page is just a page full of numbers, since I come from the school of proving your math. And the most relevant of which is in the kind of that second grouping from the top that has all of the different ways we calculate interest rates, ranging from the IRS calculation to pay the total cost, including all fees. We would suggest that the line item you would look at to say, if somebody asks you how much will this loan cost, is the line that's marked that says all in TIC, and you'll see that number is 4.01. That's all of the costs the city will pay, including all the fees over the life of the issue. The reso authorizes the purchase agreement, which has been reviewed by your outside bond attorney and signed off on. And so unless you have questions, our recommendation would be to accept the purchase agreement and authorize its signature.
Any questions?
So from now until 2031, you cannot pay early, but after 2031, you can pay early without a penalty. Good question.
Any more questions? Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Item number 12, boards and commissions.
We have one nomination for Building and Housing Advisory Board, Robert Cannon, filling the electrician portion with term to expire 9/19/2025. This is first notification, so no vote is required. We do have one resignation to act upon. The Union Depot Commission, Michael Greenslaw has resigned due to conflict with time of meeting and his job. So I would need a motion to accept the resignation.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The only thing I have as far as commissions goes is we did meet, Historic Preservation Commission did meet tonight, right before this, and we, of course, are working on the Bodden House up here on North Third, and we have deconstructed and stored all that that was available to take out of it, and plan on reconstructing and finding historic parts of, to make it as historic as possible. And we would like to thank Walmart for their grant of $1,500 towards that project. Any council liaison reports? Anybody? Okay. Item number 14, staff reports.
Just giving you an update on the vacant property registry. At this point, we have 14 registered, 8 permits we're taking out for rehab of projects, and 1 is being demolished. We have several that have been put up for sale. Casey is requesting, as the ordinance states, that they send in the date that it went for sale so we can actually keep tabs on that. And she sent today a 30-day notice to the remaining individuals that have not registered.
Rampart Pond, the contractor is looking to start on March 27th. Obviously, that's depending on the weather. Riverfront Trail, Shoemaker and Holland Engineers has been in contact with the DOT. We did receive an email back that we should be getting approval for the archaeological study within the next 2 weeks. AC Contracting is going to be starting on the new Victory Park play equipment sometime around the middle of April. Public Works has put together a bid package for the roof replacement of the public safety building. That will be available for contractors for pickup starting tomorrow. A public bid letting will be held on Monday, April 3rd at 2 p.m. Michael Clark and I will be meeting with Klingner Engineering at the North Landfill on April 4th to go over and discuss some minor repair work that was identified in their last inspection.
Just an update on our testing process. We have made 2 conditional offers to a couple of applicants. They have some further hoops they have to jump through before those become unconditional offers. And we've also submitted our GTSB grant application for some general enforcement funds that will create a force multiplier for seatbelts, speeding, and impaired driving.
One thing that I have, Chief Baum has requested that if the council so desires to place the vote on promoting an officer to captain on Saturday's agenda as part of the budget hearing. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay, so we'll place it on the agenda and we'll get it out right away in the morning, so.
So, yeah. Okay, anybody else? Item number 15, new business. With that being not said, because we have no new business tonight, we will do item number 16. I need a motion to approve. We'll take a 5-minute break and come back to have a motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
USB drive. Yep, that one. And should be, yeah, city council. Pardon me? 1974 to 1978. And I was stationed there with F-111D, D as in dog, as in dog, as in dives into the ground. Okay, so those were still F-4s there at that time, weren't they? F-1, oh geez, the thing, I love it, someone told me what an F-100 was. It shows that you could get a bathtub and fly with a big enough engine on it. Oh yeah. Those things could not fly. They could not fly. I worked avionics, the WUSA weapon system stuff, right? I worked that avionics. Then I got transferred over into frontline maintenance. I did that for a couple of years. And then I said, I'm out of here. Those things leak. Those fuel cells leak. We had people walking around out there on the flight lane at night. And it's just a fuel cell that dissolved because they took the bladders out and they just lined the inside of the compartment. Oh yeah. Yeah. And it corroded out. Don't even. Those are bad. Those are bad days for me. I mean, like I said, anybody who's been to Canada, I remember I flew into the airport. They're bringing me in. You know, I'm a new guy coming in. Everything. I come in, Texas Sagebrush, Texas International, the old two-engine props that flew into the airport. So I come in, and they've got a little kiosk, for gifts and everything else. And they have this picture of this mule with the tongue hanging out, laying on the ground. And there's a sign that says, Cannon, 2 miles, hell, 1. Not me. Well, it's interesting is I ended up going many years later to go and work in Carlsbad, running a nuclear laboratory there for the state that was looking for burial of nuclear waste out in a salt mine. And I drove through Cannon, and I'm going down past Portales, and I said, I remember that's where they used to have the speed trap. And sure enough, I'm watching it because the speed went from 45 to 20. I rode the brakes, got myself down to 20. And as I drove by, sure enough, there's a policeman. I started laughing. I said, boy, memories. Oh, no, they weren't. You did not want to get in trouble with them. Oh, yeah. Well, see, I ended up getting out, coming back as an officer in the Army. And we had a base in Fort Riley, Kansas, and Junction City was on one side. On page, they were there for 3 days. First 3 days, they're gone. And I told the truth. I said, those are off limits. The bars are off limits. They know you're moving. If you walk in there, they will call the cops. They'll roll you. They'll take your money. I was Junction City on a regular basis, executive officer, hold people out of jail because being, Butterbar, I got the evening officer of the day. I'm the one who did the midnights. So did I. I came back and switched from Air Force to ROTC. Well, my case, I got out because it interfered with me. The same days we had a weekend, weekend drill, where normally the days we had the weekend cumulative exam, no makeup. And so I had to make a decision, finish school or, keep on up. So I resigned. I had 10 years. Yeah, like I go there. I want to relive it. Yeah, sure. I mean, I beat myself.
Don't hurt yourself. We're going to call to order the council workshop, March 16th, 2023. The first item on the agenda is the proposed software purchase.
So staff has requested to present to council all of the proposed software purchases for fiscal year 23-24. We are purchasing in 3 different departments. Fire department, this is a complete fire department software package that meshes seamlessly with the LECOM dispatch center, tracks all aspects of fire department operations such as incident response, permits, CAD integration, hydrants, personnel properties, and inspections to name a few. Cost for startup is $17,622.50. Well, that's, I'm sorry, that's the total with initial one-time fees of $6,725 and reoccurring costs of $10,897.50. It's needed because the current software package is not fulfilling the needs of the department. They've been waiting 3 years to get updates to their software that is not coming through so that they can better utilize and track the various things that they're not able to track right now. And the benefit is that it allows the department to run more effectively and efficiently. In Public Works, the modules include work management, sign management, pavement management, including the following: track and manage work by location using one street map, work order, scheduling and templates, track labor, inventory, parts, and materials, track work completed and maintenance history, track sign locations, and then whatever those initials stand for, the MIITCD. Do you know what that stands for, Brian?
I don't know what the acronym is, but that's the regulating agency on signage.
Okay, there we go. Condition, reflectivity, and work orders. It takes the remaining service life, next treatment, and 5-year budget. It does a road layer on OpenStreetMaps with color by lookup, so it allows us to take the information from the street assessment, put it in, and then be able to present it in a visual format, which I think is going to be easier to present to the council than trying to say this street or that street and point it out. It'll be easier just to be able to use this program. And it can do a sign layer displayed on OpenStreetMap. Cost, startup, initial cost is $8,675. Annual is $6,500. Currently, there is no formal system for tracking sign replacement or condition. Street assessment data is not in easily manageable form. The benefit is signs will be inventoried with reflectivity rating so that the maintenance and replacement can be more accurately tracked. The street assessment information can be uploaded into the software to allow for visual maps of street conditions, dates, and work completed on streets and easier reassessments. And then in community development, it's through the same software company as Public Works. The modules include permit management, code enforcement, portal, and portal home, including the following: configurable portal for ease of applying for permits, tracking current permits, and tracking permits online. So this would allow contractors or anybody that needs a building permit to be able to complete it online. Allows for submitting code enforcement issues online and viewing code cases. Messaging feature for easy interaction with citizens, inspection and plan review tracking, track permits and cases with customizable reporting. Includes premium data, so we get 25 megabytes of uploads with 100 gigabytes total storage. OpenStreetMap tracking abilities with quarterly updates. 3 custom web forms for Portal Home. Free forms, letters, and/or permits utilizing iWork template library and up to 3 custom letters. Draw and annotate on plans. Save data in layers on plans and place watermark on plans. Initial cost is $10,500. Annual cost $8,000. Currently, permits cannot be applied for online. Software will allow tracking for vacant property registration. Plans can be submitted digitally, reviewed and annotated digitally, then stored and tracked digitally. The benefit will allow contractors and citizens to submit permits without having to come to City Hall. Tracking of vacant property will be easier and more manageable, and it will allow for plans to be reviewed, processed, and tracked more effectively. Are there any questions on any of that?
Cole, can I add, and this was on a different proposal, if, if the council would like, or that we can add online credit and debit card processing for all the permitting. Right now, they can actually call and we can run it through, or they can pay by cash or check. So that's $2,000 more for that actual part of the subscription. Other than that, and I think on the permit management that we can add all of our permits through the city, not just through my department, but, you know, special uses, anything with the street department, excavations. So we can try to get all of those added.
Is this all through iWorks, or are we talking 3 different software umbrellas?
The fire department software is through a different company, but the public works and community development modules are through iWorks.
Okay, so they will have the same umbrella, same,
Correct.
okay.
And in fact, by looking at the public works modules, they reduced a lot of the initial costs because we were buying more.
And these annual fees, that would also include like a support system, troubleshooting, we can call them. It's not going to be, hey, we call them, now we've got to pay a fee because we use them to help. This is included in our annual fee, correct?
It's included in that, and then any updates to the software.
Does the software work with the current technology that we have?
Yes, because the computers were updated 3 years ago. We did have to replace some of the hard drives in the computers, but those are $89 for solid state drive instead of a whatever.
I just want to make sure they would be
Yeah,
compatible.
yeah,
Okay.
it would be compatible.
The animal shelter, excuse me, was going to get software too as well, right?
I can't recall.
Because
if
like
that-
they're
but-
doing everything by paper right now with the
Right.
carbon copy receipts, and Tom presented at the budget meeting that he was going to get software.
Okay.
And we can
So since
probably-
we have all of this in front of us on one page, could you go back and add in all the details for the animal shelter so I can see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That was one that slipped my mind. So
Okay.
So would that just be permits that they're referring to? The
Permits and records and like the city, yeah, the city tags, all of that stuff isn't going in any software right now. So he came to the budget meeting and was talking about this software that they need to get.
Okay.
So Pam also asked if you wanted to spend an extra $2,000 and get the ability for people to pay their permits online.
If people want to pay online, I think it's great.
And
Get their
that's a
money.
one-time $2,000 fee. That doesn't raise our annual fee, correct? That's just our
I
initial.
believe it would raise the annual fee, yes.
Do you know what it'd raise our annual fee?
It would be $2,000.
So we'd be $2,000
Yes.
more a year to add that process?
Yes.
How much does the city currently collect in permit fees estimation annually?
You would ask that, and I honestly, you know, generally it's probably just on building permits, 30, 40,000 a year. I mean, at this point, this month, it's probably been 10,000 this month. So it's actually been a good month for.
Well, and how many
permits.
of those 30-day letters do you think she sent out today?
Today for, I really truly, there was 200 and some.
I mean, so at a minimum, 200
Probably a minimum of 200, yes.
with a $200 fee attached to them.
Do you think, Pam, that if online bill pay was an option, that more people would pay so the city would collect more outstanding? fees?
I just think it would make it a simpler proposal if you're going to submit a permit, that you could just actually pay it online, and then you don't either have to come in and/or call and pay down here. And I know that there was one the other day, I think it was $2,000, and there was a $50 charge on it for using that credit card. I'm not sure how they do that. It's probably the same way. I will ask. But I think it's just more convenient for individuals they're already stressed about coming in and providing the information for the permits. I think if they can just upload them and pay online, it'll make it a simpler process.
I think people might also be more willing to do it, to do the permitting process, to go through it. Sometimes people don't get a permit even though they're supposed to.
Yeah, I think that it's intimidating sometimes to come. I mean, I think sometimes they just feel intimidated to come in. And I do think more people would probably use it if it was just something that they could do online.
Would this online bill pay, would this allow, say, Casey to collect some of her penalties online as well? Or would it be just
Correct.
permits?
I think all the permitting, we could implement that online. That's why I was asking about the animal shelter. But they probably need a different software for their records.
They're wanting something to connect almost with lead.
Yeah, and that's, sure.
Thank you, Pam.
Any other questions?
On to the next thing. We are going to the pre-treatment program, and take it away, Cole.
Dr. Askew is here tonight to kind of do a presentation on the industrial pretreatment program, why we have to do it, what's involved with it. So go ahead.
Well, thank you. Good evening. First off, for all the industries that have shown up tonight, one of the things that had been suggested is come here and talk about your permit. What we'd rather do is schedule one-on-one with everybody, every industry. And so what'll happen is already on Monday, Amstead Rail is showing up to want to talk about their permit. What we'd like to do is set up times with the different industries, and you can do it either we come there or we do a Zoom meeting. Now, some people, I know Pat right there, wants face-to-face. He doesn't want a Zoom meeting. But we'll send it out to every industry. Here's the times and dates. Pick what you want. Now, the Zoom meetings will be okay. Let's be on Friday will be the Zoom meetings. And Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday is I drive down, and Tom and I show up at your place, and we go over the permit step by step by step. Remember, these are draft permits, so they can be modified easily. So that's why they said draft on them. Why is there a date? Well, the city code said 30 days. And remember, ADM hammered us for not giving 30 days. So we gave 30 days. Now, it can go beyond that, but that's why there's a 30-day time period in there to comply with city code. Now, before we get into pretreatment with the city council, back in 2021, Tom Richardson asked me to evaluate the pretreatment program for the city of Keokuk. And I wrote a report. And then Cole shared it with the council members January 2022. If you were not on the city council at that time, you have a paper copy there. All right? That is something that if you look through it, a lot of these problems were pointed out at that time. Then in February of 2022, the city was issued a NOV SNC by the Iowa DNR for failing to meet the requirements of the pretreatment program. Then we made some modifications. Those got kicked back, and I will say the city council kicked them back. And so DNR issued another NOV SNC against the city, and that's going to be one of the slides there as we get to it.
exactly what they said. So, not to sound like a really stern teacher here, but my concern is protecting the city and protecting the citizens and the industries of the city. And so there are things we have to address. And so we're going to go over, why do we have pre-treatment? Because those were questions. Why do we have to do this? Do other people have to do this? And the answer is, well, yeah, we have to do it. And the answer, the other one is, yes, there are other ones. So we'll kind of get going here. If you have questions, just shout them out, please. So let's see. See if I can get this to move forward. All right. Obviously, it doesn't want to do it. Well, we'll just do this. Come on. What in the world? Pardon me? Yeah, I know. I don't even want to restart your computer to finish installing important updates. I'm not. No. I just told you the mouse to come in. Let me turn that on. See if I can get the mouse now. Okay, where is the mouse? I can't even get the mouse to show up. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. It was working. Yeah, I know it was. I'm going to turn this back on. Let's see. Okay, there we go. I got it to work. Okay, there's me. Smiling face. Last week, I finished up a 30-hour training class at Des Moines Area Community College teaching industrial pretreatment. And we had another instructor, Tom Atkinson from ISG, who has years of experience. We had DNR and EPA show up also to instruct. It was 30 hours on how to do industrial pretreatment. And the people that attended were plant superintendents, people from Iowa DNR that don't know how to do pretreatment. And their bosses said, you need to go and take this training. So that's kind of my experience, 30 plus years in doing this. And I won't say unfortunately, but one of my jobs has been, I'm called in when there is a big mess to clean up. If everything's working really well, they don't need me. I'm the guy who shows up, better call Saul, better call Ed. All right. So we're going to start off to begin with. We have two types of industries in this town. We have categorical industrial users, CIUs, and we have significant industrial users. By default, by the federal regulations, if you are a categorical industrial user, you are automatically a significant industrial user, regardless of how much water you discharge or what type of water it is. They said you are significant because you are categorical. So, who has to do this? There are 20 cities in Iowa that have a required pretreatment program. That's federally required. And the state basically watches to make sure we do things, so does EPA. Now you look, Burlington, Fort Madison. Right now I'm in Fort Madison doing the same thing I'm doing here. They got written up by DNR. There's Keokuk. I was talking about Tom Atkinson, one of the guys that taught in that 30-hour class. He is doing up in Dubuque what we have to do here. So Dubuque has to have that. Now, you say, well, is it important if we're a pretreatment city or not? And the answer is no. Because if you're not a pretreatment city, let's say like Marshalltown, they have 3 categorical industries that the state writes the permit, but then what does the state do? They put the permit requirements in the city's wastewater treatment plant permit. And the wastewater treatment plant has to manage the whole thing. But if there's a violation, instead of going after the industry, DNR goes after the city. So regardless of the size of the city in the state of Iowa, you will have to have pretreatment. Either you control it as a pretreatment city, and that's based on the size of your wastewater treatment plant, or the state does it, and that's a federal requirement. So you can go to any town in Iowa that has a wastewater treatment plant, and if they have a categorical or a significant industry, there has to be a permit for it. Now, here in our town, we write the permits. In smaller towns, DNR writes the permits. So you have all of the trouble and none of the control. So there are basically 93 cities that have treatment agreement systems in Iowa. Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, okay? You just work your way around. West Burlington, you have Burlington, but West Burlington has treatment agreements. They take the landfill leachate up there. Burlington quit taking it. West Burlington has to take it now. They have a treatment agreement. So what is the controlling federal code that applies to cities that have pretreatment programs? Now, you'll hear me talk about 40 CFR 403, Part 403. That is the federal regulation. And 403.8 has all of the requirements the city has to meet. And it's arduous, and it's painful to read through these. And sure enough, I gave every student in that class a thumb drive with all the federal regs on it, and we constantly looked at 403, painfully looked at it. So, development and implementation by the POTW. POTW, Publicly Owned Treatment Works. It's the Water Resource Recovery Facility now in this town, WRRF, correct, Tom? And if you have questions and I can't answer them, Tom's answering them, or we'll both answer them, okay? So, what is the industrial pre-treatment program? Well, it's required by the Clean Water Act. Purpose is to protect the POTW collection system, that's the sewer, the environment, the workers, and you'll hear me talk about biosolids. Biosolids, that's the sludge that comes out of the digesters. And right now, I'll just talk out of school here, but right now in Fort Madison, we have had one industry that has contaminated the biosolids so much they have 1 year's worth of biosolids they have to take to the landfill. They cannot put it on the farm fields. And so the cost to the city is 20 times more than what they had put in the budget for putting it on the land. So we have to protect the biosolids because if a farmer won't take it, you got to take it to the landfill, and that costs a lot more. Typically, biosolids coming out of a belt filter press are 20% by weight solids, 80% by weight water, and that's what you're hauling to the landfill. Okay. Prohibitions prevent pass-through and interference in hazardous conditions. Pass-through and interference. You guys had pass-through from what ADM caused. It passed through the plant, it couldn't be treated, and you violated your NPDES permit for a long while. That's pass-through. Interference is what's happening up in Fort Madison. It's interfering with the wastewater plant's ability to land apply their biosolids. That's interference there, okay? Categorical standards set technology-based limits for specific industrial categories. We have metal finishing, we have slaughterhouses, we have pharmaceutical manufacturing. So every categorical industry may have specific limits. Metal finishers have limits if they discharge processed water. We have organic chemicals and fibers. We have an industry in town that discharges to the sanitary sewer that has been designated by Iowa DNR as an organic chemical and fiber manufacturer. It's in DNR's explanation of the other NPDES permit. This facility has their own wastewater treatment plant. Plus, we have found they discharge to the city. Well, guess what? They're categorical in 2 different categories. Plus, in one of the categories, because I deal with this with Exalta in Fort Madison, there is a long list of organic chemicals you have to test for if there's processed water, okay? General pretreatment regulations in 40 CFR 403, state rules, Iowa 56, IAC 62. All right, 40 CFR part 403. Remember I said 403.8? The categorical standards are a subsection of 403. Each one has their own number. But there are many general requirements in 403 that apply to every categorical industry, every single one, with one exception. And we'll talk about that this evening also. Okay, the pretreatment program, Clean Water Act. Now, some of these slides came directly from Iowa DNR, such as this one. Requires facilities with a design flow of greater than 5 MGD, and it was set up in 1983 for this city. That's based on wet weather flow, not dry weather flow, design flow. But in 1983, this city submitted a pretreatment program that was approved because I got copies of it. Because the EPA inspector said he expects to see a copy of that when he shows up again at every wastewater treatment plant to see if you're doing what you said you were going to do in 1983. Okay, so federal regulations. You have to issue permits. You have to perform inspections. And you have to take enforcement for non-compliance. There is no exception to that rule. Now, what happens if the city doesn't do that? Well, you know, we'll talk about that in a second. Cities without pretreatment programs require a treatment agreement. We were just talking about that, like Mount Pleasant, Fairfield, and such have to have treatment agreements because they're not big enough to be pretreatment cities. Industrial users. What is a significant industrial user? Discharges greater than 25 gallons per day of processed water to the POTW. Now, a lot of industries say, well, we don't discharge that much. We're not significant. Okay, that's rule 1. Now, if also contributes a processed waste stream that makes up 5% of the dry weather, average dry weather, hydraulic or organic load. That means 5% of the flow capacity of the plant, or like ADM did, more than 5% of the treatment capacity of the plant. That makes you significant. But look at number 3. Number 3, if you are a categorical industry, as per 40 CFR criteria, you are significant regardless of whether you discharge any wastewater or not. Now, does that mean all this stuff falls on you? No, but we have to say you're categorical. We have to do an inventory of all the industries that discharge to the city and say, are they categorical, or are they significant, or are they non-significant, all right? Then any user that meets this definition must be regulated by the city either under an approved program or by a treatment agreement. Treatment agreement is like Marshalltown, you know, Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, all of those. They have to be regulated under treatment agreements. Excuse me, not Marshalltown. Fairfield, Mount Pleasant, and I was thinking of Mount Vernon is the other one. So.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Can you go back?
Yes.
So here there also states is determined by the department to have or potentially have a significant impact on the POTW.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any businesses that we are including in our pre-treatment plan that
Yes.
are under that?
Yes.
Who are they?
Well, I was going to get to it, but I'll tell you now.
Oh, do you have a
There-
slide?
We were going to talk about that later, but I'll tell you right now since you asked.
Okay.
There is an industry whose industrial product is considered categorical, but it has specific language in it that exempts what's called indirect discharge. Indirect discharge is discharge that goes to a city's sewer, exempts them. But when we visited the industry and inspected it, they have large vibratory systems in which they put metal parts and they vibrate them with water and these large, tetrahedral shaped polishing stones. And guess what they do with that water when they're done all of that? They open the stopcock at the bottom and drain it to the sanitary sewer. So because they are discharging metals from polishing copper, brass, and other gears, they're cutting gears, St. Louis gear falls under what we would call significant, but they are exempted from being categorical by the federal regulation itself. So that's the one that we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay, here we go. Here's a list of all the categorical industries that we have found in Keokuk. There's 12 of them. Now, before there was only one. Remember, that was ADM. That was and then they had a few that they had permits, but they really didn't go into depth on things. Okay, Amstead Rail, Cary Transit. Why Cary Transit? They clean out the inside of vehicles. That is called transportation equipment cleaning. City of Keokuk landfill leachate. We have to issue a permit to the city because landfill leachate is a categorical discharge. Decker Industries. Now, the interesting thing about Decker, they are considered a non-significant categorical industry. They're a zero discharger. They don't discharge any industrial waste. But we have to identify them. Okay, we've done our job, and then we issue a permit, and instead of calling it zero discharge, we're going to call it non-significant categorical because you discharge less than 100 gallons a day of categorical wastewater. Who else may fall underneath that? Because our inspections show they don't discharge much, if any, contact water is Morris Rubber. Okay? And, well, no, it's your autoclave. The autoclave, all right? And Keokuk Steel Casting, that's in the old cardboard factory there on Main Street, they're grinding castings there, but we have to go and look to find out where's the manhole. We went there at the first time, we couldn't find the manhole to sample from them, but historically there's a manhole there. We have to look at that. Yeah, so we have to go and find that. But those are ones. Now, what are not, okay, we have ferrosil, monofill, landfill leachate. That's landfill leachate. They're connected to the city sewer. They pump to the city sewer. And for a while, you weren't billing them. Now they're sending the flows and they're getting billed, okay? Glycerin traders. That's where W2 fuels are. They bring in glycerin and it's left over from making biodiesel. That's one of the waste products. And then they boil off, distill off the methanol and the water, and they neutralize what's left over of the caustic in it. And then they resell it as a purified industrial grade glycerin. We don't know about that one yet. We went and inspected, and we really need to do a water survey of exactly what they're sending, where they're sending. That's kind of a hodgepodge of pipes over there. So we issued a permit because they are categorical, and we're going to be working with them on where should they sample. But there is a key thing to remember here. Everybody remembers the combined sewers, right? CSO2. CSO2 says when we do the industrial first flush, or that first flush we want to get off of having to repair the whole CSO, but just manage the first flush, it can't have industrial waste in it. Well, the problem is there's a big old storm grate right back where Glycerin Traders downloads their tanks, empty their tanks while they're emptying out the waste glycerin to take it into the plant to treat it. And that slotted storm drain is just covered with glycerin. You know, it's oily, greasy. You can tell they spill down there. That goes to CSO2. So those are some control things we're going to have to put in the permit. Okay? Gully transport. Okay? Hennages. Interesting thing about Hennages. Talking to Robert Hellenthal and Michael, we found out there are 2 sewer lines at Hennages. One that's never been measured at all. And Tom, what was the decimal point difference? Was that Hennages or was that Glycerin Traders? Decimal point being in the wrong place? Hennages. Well, the decimal point was in the wrong place in their favor. You imagine moving the decimal point one place, you know. Okay, that's been corrected. But I have a discharge of processed water that goes to CSO2. And that's one of the things in their permit. They're required under special conditions to put in a sampling location at that manhole. Now, if you want to know where that manhole is, go to Hawkeyes, walk out to the edge of the parking lot, looking towards Hennages, and that's where the manhole is. So we have Keokuk steel casting, Morris rubber. We have Roquette. Okay. Now, that's something that is prickly pear, but they discharge to the city. How do they discharge to the city? They have their own sewage treatment plant. Well, the sewer line that comes at B and Williams goes through their facility, ends up coming back out at their main gate. And they have lines connected to that, and we don't know what's in it.
How do you know they have lines connected to
We
it?
have a flow meter upstream at B and Williams. We have a flow meter down right at the manhole at their main gate, the 12-inch line there. We measured flow from June till December of 2022. And it was the difference. We subtracted out what's at B and Williams that was just going in, and we subtracted it out from what was coming out. And we ended up with 10 to 60,000 gallons a day. Okay, now, there is televising done by Robert of that sewer line, and he found connections, live connections to it in Roquette. So that was done before we set the flow meter. We're not just showing up and trying to catch people. He televised, we saw things, we put the flow meter, we got a significant flow difference. Okay, that's something we have to address. You know, and I mean, I hate to make that sign, but that's the sign. It's money. It's city sewer money. Okay. And then there's St. Louis gear, which we talked about being significant but not categorical. They are exempted categorical wise in a categorical standard, saying it doesn't apply to indirect dischargers. Okay. SIU pretreatment requirements. Make SIU determinations. We sent out industrial user surveys last year, and the industries filled them out. They were lengthy. I'm sure some people tell me how lengthy they are. They were very lengthy, but it told us exactly what type of industry are you. We got the name and address and contact for the facility, principal products and raw materials used. We got the MSDSs or SDSs, wastewater volume and characteristics. Well, in some cases, that's true. In some cases, we didn't get the exact answer. That's why we put the flow meters out. Okay? Batch versus continuous discharge. Now, the batch would be something like the autoclave at Morris Rubber. That's a batch discharge. It's not continuous. You're not doing, you know, running it through a continuous autoclave and water coming out of it. All right, so that's a batch discharge. So we looked at that. Okay, any pretreatment provided. Do any of these industries have something to remove what they're discharging to the sewer? Now, as you know, the only one that was doing pretreatment was ADM, and they weren't doing it, pardon me, my personal opinion, not very well. But nobody else is doing pretreatment. Okay? We need to collect a sample and we need to require every categorical industry outside of the ones that have determined to be non-significant categorical have to do what's called a baseline monitoring report. Now, what's important about that is a BMR is required in the federal regs. If you're categorical, you have to do a BMR, or if the city decides that you're significant enough to do a BMR. What's in a BMR? Well, how much flow? What is the BOD or COD being discharged to the city? Hey, that's billing plus treatability. Total suspended solids, total nitrogen, total phosphorus, oil and grease, and the metals. Plus on top of it, if you happen to be categorical, such as organic chemicals and fibers, there's a whole list of chemicals you have to look for. So what is the BMR? It's usually 3 to 4 samples, 1 a month. And you do all these analyses, then you submit the data to the city. Now, just to bring up Fort Madison, in Fort Madison, every industry, we had 14 of them, did BMRs, including the prison, because it was considered to be significant from what it says. In the prison, they have a thing called a muffin monster. And a muffin monster grinds things up. So at the bottom of the discharge of each set of cells, they have a muffin monster to grind up the shanks, the illegal drugs, the illegal phones, and anything else the convicts flush down the drain. And all of that comes to the city. So they had to do a baseline just to see what they were sending us. Okay? Conduct follow-up for completeness and clarification. That means annual inspections. And follow permitting process, issuing a permit. Now, what does the permit do besides irritate everybody? Everybody raise your hand. It irritates. Raise your hand if it irritates you. It irritates. It irritates me. All the industries, raise your hand. It irritates you. What is it there for? It clarifies who's responsible and what they're supposed to do. Who's responsible and what they're supposed to do. And in your own city code, there is a list of everything that's supposed to be in a permit. You've even put it in your code that has to have this, it has to have this. Okay, so what happens? In the past, you didn't do that. So in these new permits, why are they 24 pages long? Because we had to put in all this stuff. What you can discharge, hey, that's a couple of pages. But then everything else, all that legal verbese, the city was written up by EPA in 2020 for not doing that. Those little 4-page permits failed to meet the city's own code requirements. So there you go. There are the minimum things. So here, any grant for monitoring waiver by the city, sure, Deco Manufacturing's getting one. And we may do Morris, and we may do part of Keokuk steel casting, okay? Requirements for notification of city written 24 hours of becoming aware of violation and to require non-domestic users to resample and submit results of resampling to the city. That's in the permit. We took that specific language that you have in your ordinance and put it in the permit.
Has the ordinance been modified? I know we were needing to update many ordinances, and we were definitely in the wrong with ADM as their permit allowed them to do things by the city.
I have worked with Cole on some things and with Tom on some things on the ordinance. We're leaving that basically till after this, and there's some things that the city administrator, we've redlined and such. This needs to be changed. This needs to be updated. This needs to be clarified.
Don't know how we could give permits if we haven't updated the ordinance.
Well, we are using the ordinance language as written.
But we'll have to, if we're going to update it, you have to update the permit. Kind of seems backwards.
Format. Once the ordinance gets changed, we have this checklist. We go through and we make the changes.
It just seems very backwards to not fix the ordinance first.
Well, the thing is, the permits have to be issued, and they're late, and they were never done correctly. So what we're showing to DNR, which is looking at assessing fines against the city, and we'll talk about that when we get to that letter from Terry last May. we have to, and I have to do the 12-month report here in the next month. So we want to say we've issued the draft and I'm working on finishing the permits. But as you change language, it's like anything else. It's a chicken and egg argument. We still have to issue the permits. It's in the current language as written in the city code, just like the local limits are going to have to be updated because ADM has left town. In the permit, we have the current local limits because that's what's legal. That's what's in the ordinance. So what we're looking at is what is legal in the ordinance. What do we have to put in? So,
But we'll be updating the ordinance.
yeah, and we'll be updating the permits. I mean, once the BMRs are done, the permits are going to get updated anyway, because there may be something the industry has to look for, or there may be something they're going to be exempt from looking for because we've shown it's not there.
No.
But we have to look for it. So here's the optional ones. Look at this. We did everything that's in the optional requirement of the city code except the unit charge. We didn't put that in the permit because that's something we want to keep independent of the permit. The unit charge is how much per BOD, how much per gallon. Okay, we're not going to put that in the permit. That's a city code thing. That is under the purview of the city administrator and the people who are deciding what do they need in revenue. That's not in the permit. That we're staying away from that. But you notice also the EPA audit requirements of 2020, we met all of those too. So we're saying, what does the city code say we have to do? What are the optional things? Let's just do it. And on top of it, let's take everything EPA told us to do in 2020 and do that also. So when Najee shows up, we can give them that 2 sets of tables. And we'll make a separate set of tables for each permit. That's for the Amstead Rail permit, okay? The page numbers and such. What we'll do with the other permits, we'll create a separate table for each one. So Najee can say, okay, give me the permit. It says it's on this page, flip, flip, flip. There it is. Yes. Okay, Najee Hamid is oh man, he is a tough EPA auditor. When he audited Dubuque here a couple of months ago, he had been called in by DNR because Dubuque wasn't doing anything, saying, yeah, we're going to do it, and then they didn't. When he left, he called in the members of the city council and the city administrator to tell them exactly the degree of trouble they were in. And that's when they got hold of Tom Atkinson and say, can you come up and fix our problems? So Najee is extremely knowledgeable in the federal regs. And he's the one who shows up. And he's the one who showed up in 2020 to audit the pre-treatment program. So there's the thing about that. Also, just to let you know, Najee's also one that's auditing your stormwater CSO program, along with Lance Tipton. And Lance Tipton is the EPA guy that Najee reports to. He's also the one that's auditing and reviewing the industrial pretreatment program. So they don't even have to go down the hallway to talk about CSO2 versus pretreatment. So evaluation, we have to evaluate general information, production process areas, wastewater production, slug and spill control. Remember how ADM fought? Oh, that's not a slug. That's not a slug. It didn't have any oil in it. Failing to recognize that there's a whole list of slug control guidance documents from EPA. And everybody who took the class got those. And it talks about not only is a slug unintentional, but it's intentional and it's something that upsets the wastewater plant. So who would require a slug and spill control plan? Well, as we talk with the industries and look at their discharges and look at their volumes and such, and they do the BMR, then from the BMR, we will have the analytical data to decide if they need to do a slug and spill control plan. Now, the spill control plan is under RCRA, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA. That's the spill control plan. That's what the fire chief gets in on when something spills and it goes outside and goes to the stormwater. That's what the public works director gets involved in that. The slug control plan is when it goes down the sanitary sewer to the wastewater plant. Okay, chemical storage, sludge generation. Well, we don't have anybody producing sludge. If they were producing sludge, that would be something that they've precipitated out some type of metal or other process, and they may send it inadvertently to the wastewater plant. Who's the last sludge producer? ADM. They produce sludge. Monitoring, record keeping, and reporting. We've got to have in the permit, they have to record and they have to report to the city. Now, one of the things we're going to be doing is Dave Glasscock, who's down at the wastewater plant, runs the lab down there, really sharp guy. I've known Dave for 25 to 30 years. That's how long I've known the man. He may do the analysis, but he's going to send it to the industry. The industry is going to have to put it in its reporting form to see if they're in violation. Now, if it's a really bad violation, he'll tell Tom. But it'll be up to the industry to report back to Tom if there's a problem. And because there is in the 40 CFR 403, if you don't do that, the city's responsible for everything, to go out and resample, do all the reporting to DNR, and be responsible to DNR. We're not going to have that. We're going to have the city, they'll still do the testing, they'll still do it, and they'll get a revenue from it. That goes into the city, but they're not going to be the reporting agency for the industry. Yes?
And the way we do that is the city acts as a contractor, separate contractor, so we're not responsible for that. They still have to report back to us what's happening. We need to keep that separation.
And that allows you then to keep an eye on them because, you know, BOD or COD and TSS, that's money also. There's a bill for that. So we want to make sure that we kind of keep an eye on that, you know, that there's nothing that's being sent to you that's not kosher for billing. Now, here comes the most distasteful thing out of everything. We've talked about the permitting, we've talked about this, that, and everything. We're going to talk about enforcement here. Now, the city has an enforcement response plan. It says if this happens, we're going to do this. That enforcement response plan is reviewed and approved by DNR and EPA. If there is a disagreement between the city code and the enforcement response plan, now you're put in a quandary. Which one am I going to do? Because I told DNR and EPA I'm going to do this, but my city code says I do this. So we have to clean that up. And that's one of the things I've been talking with Cole and Tom about, making sure that both agree. That both agree.
Did
You want to
we-
do it? Yes.
Sorry, did we have an enforcement response plan when it came down to ADM?
Oh, yeah.
But
we
it was,
did.
it was wrong.
And
What?
It was wrong. We
well,
were here the whole time and all of the stuff we put out wasn't in agreement with our code.
well, and
Our
see-
Then
our
why are
city
we putting
attorney
things
said
out
that.
that aren't in agreement with our code?
well, and see, here's the thing. In the enforcement response plan, it says Tom and then Cole handle administrative orders. When you took that as a city council away from it, because it says in the city code you can do that, you violated your state and federal requirements. And that would be pointed out to you when we talk to this letter about this letter in a little bit. So here's the thing. You want to have it changed in the enforcement response plan, you have to change it to match your code. Then it has to be sent to Ben Hucka and then to Lance Tipton to see if they're going to agree with it. If they're not,
So did they agree with how we handled ADM?
you want my honest answer? No. They didn't. But that's water under the bridge. Let's not beat a dead horse.
Well, I just don't understand how we can enforce permits and not have the enforcement part of it done or correct.
Well, that's why the few changes we want to make in the city code will take care of that. Because when we get to enforcement in the city code, it says we will follow the enforcement response plan approved by Iowa DNR and EPA.
So this is my question though. So like ADM, they were having issues
Yes.
and they provided an action plan as to how they were going to address those issues. Yes?
Oh, you see, there it is. There was, I'm not gonna go down that pathway except to say there was an administrative order issued. There was a compliance plan put forward by the city, signed by the mayor, and then you didn't follow it. And we'll talk about that when we get
They
to
were
that
planning a
letter.
multi-million-dollar project to address the issues.
Well, I don't want to hammer that, because here's the thing. You didn't follow your enforcement response
But what I'm
plan.
saying though is that as a person that has to do enforcement, you have to work with your industries. If you chase them away, you lose $2.4 million of revenue annually. And what I'm asking you is that
Now, you're saying chase them away. We just make them follow what they're supposed to do.
I understand that, but you have to
And-
also give them time because we were not in compliance with what we were supposed to be doing
You
for
were
how
out of
long?
compliance for years at your
Exactly.
wastewater
So then
plant.
we have to give them time. We can't
No,
be.
no, your wastewater plant was out of compliance.
I know that. That's what
That's
I'm
why you were
saying.
getting written up. You were putting the city in jeopardy of getting massive fines. Now, who are we supposed to protect? We protect the citizens of the city first, right?
And the citizens of the city now are paying $12 million in revenue bonds going to geo bonds.
Well,
That
I'm
is
just-
going
I
to
just,
add it.
you know,
That's increasing our tax base.
This is something to say, we're going to let them violate. And I
I'm
don't wanna
not
go down
saying
this.
that.
This
What
is-
I'm saying-
This is an argument that cannot be won by fighting back and forth on this. Let's just say what the pretreatment says.
Okay.
Okay? Okay, now here's the thing. If the cities fail to enforce pretreatment, fail to meet IDNR US EPA requirements, enforcement response from IDNR or USPA is directed toward the city for failing to adequately implement their program. Directly from EPA, that slide. All right, so no matter what the industry does or anything else, if you fail to meet your pretreatment requirements, who is responsible? Not the industry, it's the city. Whose pockets do the money come out of? The cities. Okay, so why is pretreatment a priority? Here is the letter sent. I believe, what is that? Let's see, that's from Terry Jones, May 19th, 2022. It says, by the way, you've said all these things, city. You sent this plan that you were going to do, signed by the mayor, and you didn't do it. So here's another NOV. Oh, by the way, here are your wastewater treatment plant violations. And they list them. Okay? Then he goes on to say, let's see, let me expand that. Get that. Oh, geez, that's still doing that thing. Okay, if you look at that, the second thing that's highlighted, it says, the city is required to continue their pretreatment program review improvement efforts to ensure the program is operating in accordance with 40 CFR 403 and Chapter 62 of the Iowa Administrative Code requirements. The 90-day, 180, and 12-month compliance report the city committed to in their February 15, 2020 letter will be reviewed and evaluate improvements and enforcement efforts under the authority of the program. Now, the one I highlighted up there says, previously the department used discretionary review to deviate from the enforcement response guidance based in part on the city's February 15, 2020 claim that the pretreatment program has initiated the corrective action to bring the POTW back, not ADM, the POTW, which they didn't do, back into compliance with its NPDES discharge permit. That's what they were pointing at. They weren't talking about, are you doing pretreatment for ADM? Are you hammering ADM? You are not back into compliance. We're going to hammer you for that. Okay, now here's the two numbers. Here's the end of my slides. Here's the two numbers I want all of you to remember. Everybody in this room. 2030. What happens in 2030? Do I have someone raise their hand? What happens in 2030 besides, it's 2030? Yeah. Me or you? So what happens in 2030? You've got to complete your CSO2 project. You signed an agreement with EPA that you'll have it done by then. It's going to be where you're not discharging CSO water to the river. No, you negotiated a first flush project, but the first flush project is only in effect if you cannot have, or you do not have any industrial process water going to CSO2. I've got 2 industries we're investigating. Glycerin traders and energy. Well, first off, we have to think about what we've signed up for to meet. Let's not do what ifs. Let's talk about 2030 and what's done. Oh, and by the way, the last estimate to actually separate CSO2 was $200 million. And that's not for streets. That's not a bond to beautify the streets. So what a study design was come up to investigate the first flush and see if we can capture the first flush and only treat that. But to do that, and I'm going to be, old Mr. Curmudgeon here. In fact, the students in my class got me a t-shirt that says Mr. Curmudgeon on the front and a smiley face on the back. I almost wore that tonight. Anyway, what we've got to do is we've got to set up 2 things. First, we have to identify all industrial waste that might be going to CSO2 and what's in it. Hence the permits, hence the BMR. Second thing we have to do is we have to set up a reliable flow measurement system that doesn't give false positives on flows. And we have to set up a sampling protocol for that. And tick, 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 2030 is what, 7 years off? And we're already into March of this year. So to get, as we know, people in the trades are hard to get. They're always backlogged because there's not that many of them out there after COVID. So we have to get working on that. Now that's something that I've brought up, and I talked to Tom, I talked to Cole, I just talked to Brian tonight about it. Dave Scheckinger from Beanster and Kim is the lead on that. And we just need to meet down here and go over who's doing what and what's going on. But Dave Scheckinger has asked consistently, what is the status of the pre-treatment program? So we're not chasing the industry out of town, but we are protecting the town.
But they have to be invited to the table.
They are, but the permits are the beginning of the cycle to invite them to the table. Because we are showing to EPA and to Iowa DNR that we are complying with our pre-treatment program.
That's because we want everyone to be successful,
Right, everyone to be successful.
the industries
And just like I
included.
talked about.
We aren't
stuff-
here without our industries. And the thing about it, sirs, is that when you're talking about our community, the closure of ADM significantly impacted our community. And I understand you're talking about enforcement, and I understand you're talking about all these things, but we have to partner with them.
The city didn't discharge that crap down the sewer, did they? Who discharged?
What I'm saying is that did they have a scheduled action plan to remediate the issue? And did you ask them if they did?
We allowed them to do it for years and then we wanted them to correct it in 90 days.
Well, that's just it. If you didn't do your job for years, who's responsible? The city. I was brought in to help clean up the mess.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, but I was brought in and you were already in a lot of trouble.
So what I'm saying is you helped clean up what mess? Now we have no mess at all. Like we have $2.4 million annually that's gone, 75 jobs.
All right. Let me ask you this. Do you want to have it where we ignore the federal rules?
I'm
and the
not
state
saying that. What I'm
rules?
saying is that what I asked you is, did we have an action plan with them?
It was
Did
too
we-
late. It was too late for the action plan because the city was already 2 years in non-compliance. So it's too late to sit there and say, we're going to have an action plan. Now, as for other industries, yes, we want to have an action plan if they have to, but don't bring up ADM. That was an absolute disaster from day one.
So then why
Because
didn't
the
you?
city was in non-compliance and ADM was discharging things they weren't supposed to. Now that's it.
And now they're gone. And we have
So,
more
okay,
problems.
let me ask you this. Would you like them to have stayed and continued to do what they're doing?
No, what I would like to have is that we would had a, I've talked to 6 different people that have wastewater treatment backgrounds in the state of Iowa in the last 3 days. And from my understanding is when they have issues like this, because they have processing plants, meat packing plants, all these other things, they work with those industries very closely on how to get them where they need to get. And it takes time because guess what? You can't just get parts overnight. It's a 70-week lead time for electric parts right now. You have to be able to give them a schedule that makes sense.
Well,
And we have to work with the Iowa DNR on that and EPA too then.
in the permits, I'm sorry, but in the permits, all it says is they have to do a baseline monitoring report within 4 months of the permit being issued. Everything else, including all the additional sampling stations, it says process to be worked out with the city. So I can see where, you can talk to as many people as you want to, you're going to get as many different opinions. All I'm saying is permits are issued as a requirement. In the permits, it says, here's the flow based on what you told us in your industrial user survey. Okay, here is the COD and the TSS determined from the local limits calculation. Here are the local limits for the metals. Oh, by the way, we added oil and grease because that's in the city code. Okay, all that goes through. And oh, by the way, you need to report this time, this frequency. Now that can be worked out with how often they need to be sampled. All right, that's done. Then the only other special conditions in that permit is a baseline monitoring report, which is required in the federal rates. It's required 6 months before they start discharging to the utility. 6 months before they start discharging to the sewer. So all of them are late. So we're saying you can do BMR. And then the ones we want them to put in sampling stations, it says, as per the requirements worked out with the city. There is nothing in that permit except it's a permit. And it's bigger and thicker than what they're used to getting.
Ed, what I'm saying though is that if you knew this was a problem and you did you bring it to the light of the city council that you need to go in and negotiate and talk to the ADM to figure out? I'm not talking about regulations. I'm talking about if you have this situation in your community, how do you handle people, not regulations? How do you handle industries, not regulations?
Boy, I tell you what, that's going to be that's a multiple beer argument or discussion because it depends on the industry. Now, I went in, sat down with Pat, and Pat told me all of his problems. He's also told me what he didn't like. So did Decker. We talked to other industries, and when we did the industrial user survey, a lot of them didn't like it. And we had training. We actually had it at the library. We had Zoom training, one-on-one. So we worked with the industries at that time. They knew and we told them permits were coming.
I understand that.
But the only thing I will bring up with one industry that didn't really work with us very well, and it's the food process. We met with them in August. Robert Kellenthal, Tom, met with them and said, look, here's what we've seen discharged from your industry. Can you tell us what it is?
So you met with them in August and they closed in August 24th, was it? Or 25th?
No, I'm talking about
Oh, okay.
you were bringing up the thing. ADM, we handled it through the lawyers. When they brought the lawyers in, we let the lawyers in. No, with Roquette, we met with them. And they said, oh, where everything's coming to, we have a study with all pipes. We said,
I think we could play the coulda, shoulda, woulda game all night long. It's pretty obvious that all parties included could have done things different. We made some mistakes. I think we've beaten that horse, honestly.
I think you're right. And really, I'll admit, I'll do a mea culpa on my mistakes. Some things I probably should have done better. Some things I should have looked at differently. But I will tell you, the one thing I always considered when I worked on this is the security and efficiency and protecting my client, which is the city of Keokuk, is what is going to happen to them And I wanted to make sure you guys got the best protection possible. And sometimes I stepped on toes. That's what you hired me to do.
No,
Not hire you to step on toes.
no.
Well, like I said, it's one of those things. We'll just, we'll leave it at that. We can beat this horse.
Just anyway.
So anyway, I'll leave it at that. If you have questions, the other industries will contact you, set up times to do one-on-one with you for your questions, concerns. And again, remember, those are PRAFT permits, draft. They are not final. Why are the dates in there? Because we had to put 30 days in by the city code. And we also basically chewed out by ADM for not giving them 30 days. So we learned from that. I learned from that.
My question is then, you have a report that's due to Iowa DNR in April.
Actually, I'm supposed to have it now. I held off for April because I wanted to see what we're going to do tonight, what we're going to do for permits. In the past, remember, the city council rejected the administrative order that was drafted and said, no, we want to have a consent order, and you have so many months to get that done. Okay, if the city council, because you're my boss, if you say, look, we don't want any permits, Ed, then fine, no permits. Or we want to wait a long while for permits, or wait another month for permits. That just goes in my report.
My question is that this report is supposed to report that we're working with industries, or what was your assignment?
It is my evaluation of how well you completed the requirements of your pre-treatment program. It's not how well do you get along with the industry.
I'm not asking that. What I'm asking.
No, I'm saying the report is the compliance with the pre-treatment requirements in 40 CFR 403 and Part 16 and 69 of the Iowa Administrative Code. How well have you complied with that? How well have you complied with your own city code?
Yeah.
Those are the things that I have to evaluate. And
Is there a way that you say their code needs to be updated before permits can be issued?
I don't think you have that in your code. You can update your code at any time, and then you update the permits. You cannot use the reason of we have to update our code so we won't follow the requirements. You just can't do that.
So this is.
Follow the requirements. You use the code as written right now, and then you update the code, and you can update the permits. They're all electronic.
So I guess my question then is, if we need to update this ordinance and this pretreatment plan discussion that started last January, why didn't we do this the past year?
It wasn't a discussion in January.
Why are we just now hearing about it now?
Hearing with ADM. It wasn't a meeting like this.
We could have had the ordinance fixed already.
So.
It was a hearing with ADM. It wasn't.
Yes, and in fact, all the slides I had to explain this to you in that, I was supposed to remove it because they didn't want to upset ADM.
We were trying to work with.
ADM's no longer here, so it doesn't matter.
The facts were not presented to you in their unvarnished, hard to, like I said, like I told my students last week, get a glass, put a double shot of bourbon in it, take a big shot, drink of it, and curse me out.
Well, our attorney sat here and said that.
Our attorney told me to take those slides out. Well, like I said, there is a section in the 403 regs and in your own city code saying that if there is pass-through or interference, you must attend to it immediately. So you don't have to do 30 days. I pointed that out to them. It's in the city code, it's in the state code, and it's in the federal regulations. So we were in the right. But we didn't want to follow that.
It's not always about being right. It's about being.
Yes, it is. If you go to court, ask the judge.
Okay.
So I was going to ask, so are these permits, the permits have been mailed to our industries, from I understand? Emailed to our industries.
I've got a copy of them right here if anybody wants to look over the specifics.
And so what are the next 3 steps that need to happen in order for us to get the information for Mr. Askew to do his report? What are the next 3, what are the things that need to happen in order for this report to be turned into Iowa DNR?
Real simple. We plan get-togethers with every industry. We go over the draft permits. We finalize the draft permits, working with the industries, and there you go.
Okay, that's all I needed to ask. Thank you for the answer.
Yeah.
So-
But I'm just saying it's something where we're not trying to make it difficult, and we want to work with the industries, and basically Pat's more than anxious to tell us the things he doesn't like. I mean, but that's Pat. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. With every industry, we're gonna say,
Well, so,
well, tonight was, but to sit in here and go over each permit one-on-one. I just got, 7:30 right now, and even though it's 6:30 regular time, but we want to talk to the industry in a private setting with them, so they can say what they want.
okay, so we've established that you want to sit down, and who would it be? Would it be you and Tom?
Yes.
And I don't know if anybody else. You've established that you want to do that, and I think the timeline, and we need to get that done quickly, and the timeline, and while you're doing that, we need to work on our ordinance to change that, so that when you're all done and that 30 days is up, maybe we have a new ordinance and a new permit. I think that basically what the majority of people up here want, and I know this is what I want, we want it to be fair. We want it to be kind. We want everybody to be able to come to the table and say what they need to say. And we definitely do not want another, and I'm not saying it's anybody in this room's fault. We don't want another mess up like we had with ADM. Keokuk was part of it. ADM was part of it. We all know that. But at this point, we need to work one-on-one with our industries, get this under control, and move forward. And if our industries aren't happy with something that's happening in any way, shape, or form, we have to work with them to make sure they are happy when it's over. And
Put that caveat in there, because sometimes, as you know, you did code enforcement.
I know.
You know, sometimes people aren't happy.
But
we have to at least be just and informative.
But if it's done, if we all do it the right way, and we all come to the table, and we all talk to each other the way we're supposed to talk to each other, and we get it under control, there's probably going to be things that that we as a council don't like, and maybe the industries don't like, but in the long run, I think that we will all understand why we're doing it, and we have to get this under control. We have to get it quickly. This drags out. It's like ADM, we didn't do it right. We didn't do everything right. We didn't do everything wrong. But we can't sit here and let another industry leave our town we've got to get it under control. That's how I see it, under control. And for everybody out there that has an industry, we need to get to see you as fast as possible. And we need to get it under control as fast as possible. If you have a problem with what's going on and it doesn't break a law or break a rule or break the code and it fits, then let's talk about it. Let's make sure everything's under control. We've got to. And now I think we've probably, like Dan said, beat this dog to death. I think now tonight we have probably said what we need to say, and we need to get the permits out, and we need to make the appointments. So can we move on? Okay. All right. Now we have item number 3 on the workshop is the 600 block on Main Street, and that's Pam.
No. It's not Pam.
The only thing that I really want to let the council know on the 600 block updates is we are in a communication with a developer. Um, There were some things that they were concerned about. One of them was the end date that was required by the grant. Regional Planning has reached out to the state to see if that can be extended. They have gave a nod. They're not saying that they're going to, but because of a supply chain issues, they are possibly willing to extend that to the end of 2024 instead of June, I believe. Another thing that the developer really wanted to look at was first-story housing on Main, which would be either half to 2/3 of the space at the back of the commercial space. I don't really feel that that's an issue. You know, as long as we can make sure that all the codes, which they would be, that would have to be a council change. We can do that with the amendment of the zoning code. And there was also funding requested. Cole probably knows more about that with the earmarked request with Miller Meeks as far as more funding for that project. I'm still kind of just waiting on cleaning any of the junk and debris out and sending the asbestos quotes back out until I see further what is going to happen with the developer and the council.
What about the engineer? Is it 602? Is that the building?
629.
629. What's the latest on the engineer that we were waiting on that? Is that correct?
I just did get the last, I have 2 quotes. They'll be sent out. One of them was, I believe, came back at around $900 and some, and the other was $1,600.
Right, any other questions for Pam? Okay, so staff was asked to prepare some alternatives and some comparisons for the 600 block for the 3 buildings directly on Main Street. We sent information over to regional planning, and this is the presentation that they came up with. So there are basically 2 alternatives to those buildings. One, to move forward with the city as a developer, where the city owns the property during development, uses the grants to offset costs, arranges necessary construction financing, and then is free to sell the buildings when complete. Hires construction manager to implement the project. Alternate B is city demolishes the building because if we can't find a developer and we can't use these grants, the likelihood of somebody coming in independently and fixing them up is almost nil. So in this case, the city pays for demolition with cash reserves or borrowed funds, includes cost of asbestos abatement prior to demolition, considers any repairs to adjacent buildings during work, continues to own the vacant lots or transfers lots to adjacent owners. The one thing that could happen is that if you could find somebody that was willing to build something new on those lots, you know, is that possibility. It, of course, would not have any historical significance with the facades, and we don't have any control over, too much control over what actually would go back in there for aesthetics. So we did some of the comparisons, financial comparisons. So list of future revenue sources if developed come off of property tax, sales tax, and utility payments. If they're demolished, there is no future revenue sources unless the lots are sold. So the assumptions that we took was that building valuation grows at 1.5% per year. Annual tax collections are discounted 3% to account for inflation. Total value on completion of $1.25 million. That valuation was based upon what Eagles on Blondo, with taking into a factor that there would be more housing units and having the three storefronts. with a upper story housing, there's some things to consider. First, the retail portions of it would receive the business tax credit, where the first 150,000 of their valuation is taxed at the residential rate. So we factored that in. We also have to factor in the rollback. The current value on the residence is estimated to be $273,250 with a 54% rollback. As we know, the rollback can fluctuate greatly and can certainly go down. The commercial value was taxable value was $675,000. Again, taking into account that commercial is at a 90% rollback, though there is legislation right now to take that from 90 down to 80 over the next 2 years.
I was going to say too, though, these numbers are based off of not doing first story residential.
Correct.
These are just
that is
keeping
not
everything commercial and residential traditional.
right. This is for upper story housing, and all of the first floor is commercial. Okay. So a 20-year estimated value in consolidated property tax is developed, taking the current tax rate. There would be a total of $910,839 in total tax revenue, with a net present value of $667,735. The 20-year estimated for city-only property tax, if developed, is $392,286 in total, with a net present value of $287,585. So then, estimated value in sales tax and utility charges, if developed, this is based upon, I believe, $100,000 in sales. And that's for all 3 units. Total $34,778, the net present value of $25,682. So the 20-year estimated total revenues, if developed, with the consolidated tax and the utilities at $693,417. City-only taxes comes up to $313,267. Again, with everything remaining constant. To demolish. Current estimates on the asbestos abatement is $120,000. I don't know if we've gotten any new updates on that.
I have not. Mike did the demo cost, and I did reach out to a contractor just to give me a rough estimate of demo only that does not include any repairs to the adjacent building or asbestos abatement. He came back with $500,000.
So the demolition, again, the demolition cost was estimated by regional planning, with Pam having a rough estimate from a contractor of $500,000.
And then also, I think the asbestos abatement was 150, wasn't it?
I'm sorry?
The asbestos abatement was 150,000?
No, it was, I never did really give that number out. It was close to the 100, and I believe it was close to the 120.
I just, from the quote that we received? From the quote that we received for asbestos?
Yes.
Okay.
We only received one.
Thank you.
So an updated total estimation on demolition costs is actually $620,000. Okay, so Mike prepared some alternatives for the $470,000 of demolition funding. It could be deposited into an interest-bearing account, used to repair a street, address nuisances, match grant for infrastructure. So again, he goes on the alternatives. If it's deposited into an interest-bearing account, 20-year compounding value at 2%, we'd end up with $698,395. Repair a street, we could avoid borrowing for additional repairs. Multiple years of nuisance abatement, nuisance inspector funding, match grant for future housing. So that amount would match a $2.3 million grant. So again, the final comparisons here, development revenue, $693,417 over 20 years. Demolition costs would be a negative $470,000. So the demolition alternate value is $470,000. And you can see that, how he did his math there. So any questions, discussion? The thing is that we do need to perhaps start deciding exactly which way we want to go. The returning of any grant would not sit well with the EDA, and that it could jeopardize any future grants, and that they lose confidence in the city of being able to complete projects.
I have two questions. Does Main Street Keokuk allow first story housing?
Not
It's-
at this time.
So would that change like the category, or would we not be considered that? I just want to know if it, currently I think that we have someone who technically lives in a building, but like they don't live downstairs. The windows have to be open, so how does that work?
So at this point, there's a certain part of Main Street that's not supposed to have first floor
Yeah.
dwellings. That was done, honestly, I can't remember what dates those were actually implemented. We have discussed many times, and I think even in a comprehensive plan, they do talk about the lower story being used as residential as long as it's in the rear of the building.
Okay, so it
Yes.
wouldn't change like their classification?
No.
Okay.
As far as, you're talking tax-wise?
Yeah, like the whole Main Street Keokuk as an umbrella. I know they're a part of an organization. I didn't know if that was.
No, that has
they
nothing
had-
nothing
Okay.
to do with it. So I actually did talk to Kira about it.
Okay.
And so Kira did put out on the Main Street, they have like for all the Main Street towns.
Yep.
And asked them, so what kind of ordinances do you have? How are you doing it? And she said, everyone's doing it.
Okay, so some people do have it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Lots of like Fort Madison has it. I think Burlington has it. It's really common right now because we look at how our economy shifted and we just don't have as much commercial retail space needs as we used to, but we have a lot of residential needs. So that's how it shifted. But one of the things is how that ordinance is written is to make sure that, they have to have back entry.
I just wanted to make sure that we
Yeah.
wouldn't.
No, don't worry. I actually asked Main Street about it, and she said that they would support it.
Okay. My second question is, I was at the Iowa League of Cities convention, and Fort Dodge did something where they worked with a developer. I don't want to see the buildings torn down, but I don't love being the lead developer as a city. Even if these buildings are brought to code and they're wonderful buildings, I think we are going to struggle to sell them. I think we would need to have a developer at the beginning. This is just me personally. Maybe the city owns it and it's a half and half, and then by the time they're completed and they're full, the developer pays the city back the other half over a portion of time. There's different arrangements that other cities have done. Fort Dodge did this with an old mall. So it looks like the city has, skin in the game. The developer does as well. Both people want to see it succeed. I just don't love that the city would be the only
So
one.
you're referring to just a private-public partnership? Yeah. And that's been discussed? Correct. I know that
Did the developer that's contacted us give any kind of time frame on when they were going to make a decision?
he has not. He's been in contact with Mike Norris at Regional Planning.
I think that we're hoping by the end of the month that there's a conversation that we can have to get us there.
I mean, for us to make an educated decision, he kind of needs to let us know one way or the other first, right? I mean, 'cause
I
we don't-
agree. I think that this is
Correct.
a little premature, and Pam and I were just talking about that, is to like really
Is
sort of
that an
introduce the
option?
idea and explain everybody, this is what it looks like, this is what the numbers are and things.
Is that something that would keep, I don't want to say him if it's a him, but interested? Is that something that we open that door? If it's, hey, I'm not sure, but then we say, okay, well, the city is willing to work with you. However, we are not trying to be in charge of the city or in charge of that building forever. This is your project.
I guess we can open that up and he can come and speak with the council. I don't feel that it's, that I should be offering
sorry.
anything
Right now, is
without
there 600,000 available to,
800,000.
800,000 to a potential developer? So that's,
So are
That's what I
these-
mean. We're offering a ton already. Honestly, the building, we're willing to sell for $1 and here's all of this money. If they aren't willing to take it, I don't know that it's a great idea for the city to.
So just, and if any of the council would like to walk through the buildings, maybe another option if we don't get a contractor is instead of taking the money and tearing them down, that we take the money, it's possible that we could still do the facade of the $100,000. So we could take the facade grant and repair the facade on the 619, which is, it desperately needs to be taken care of. It's a hazard waiting to happen. And then we can maybe go ahead and take that money to stabilize the roofs and take down a back portion of one that is in dire need of being something done with it.
Yeah,
At least
maybe
get them
that's more appeal,
stabilized,
yeah.
and then maybe at that point,
It's more appealing.
somebody would be more interested in the structure. You walk in and you see the water coming down into these big gaps in the floor and the facade looking like it's going to fall off. It's not something that somebody can actually take on unless, it's probably a $3 million project. It's very daunting when you take a look at it. And the longer it, as I've said before, the longer that it sits, the more it's deteriorating.
One of the struggles that doing a project like this is actually the financing of them, because of how it works with them having the grants and how it has to roll in. And like when we've talked to certain developers, they're like, really, the financing is the hardest part of it. And that's where the city has that different tool set.
And I'm fine with working with them, but we cannot be the property manager of them. We cannot be trying to advertise them. We cannot be trying to get tenants. That needs to
No,
be
I don't.
someone
I
else.
think the idea is that you do the project, and by the time you get done with the project, there's somebody that's buying it or buying it halfway through even.
The code on no residential on Main Street, that just changed the code.
Yeah, that's easy.
Because that
That's
came
just,
in,
an
that
amendment to
came
the
in with Dave
ordinance.
Gudgel. Well, that came in. In order for us to do this, and we better look at our past practice, is we'd have to have a partner, a developer partner. Even if we fixed it and it looked good, then who's going to promote it? Who's going to sell it? Who's going to take care of that? Are we just going to sit back and look and say, hey, we got a nice building down there now?
I don't disagree with you, Roger. Every
I mean-
email I send out to somebody out of town, it's like, oh, I got an opportunity for you.
Yeah, well, we got opportunities. We don't own this building, but you look at the old J.C. Penney's building on 4th Street. That building, that wall's starting to bow.
You're referring to the mall building?
Yeah, if that thing falls out in the street, who's going to have to pay to get it cleaned up?
Tom Marks.
Or
Oh,
these-
I bet.
Are these numbers
bet
for
money on
building
that.
or is it for the
No,
block
total.
of buildings?
Total, it's for all, it's for the 3 buildings on Main Street
So when completed, all 3 of them will be worth $1.25 million as a total.
as a valuation.
He
yes.
won't,
What's
he
it gonna
won't even
cost?
drill a hole in there and let the water out and let it keep seeping
Because
out,
we-
keep
We
undermining that
talked at a
wall.
previous meeting of it costing like $3 million to fix them. Correct?
It is correct, yes.
Okay, so we're going to spend $3 million and they're going to be worth $1.25 million?
But the pro forma, so the revenue
Okay.
plan,
Wait a minute. And you mentioned the asbestos abatement of 120. We have to pay that whether we demolish it or we develop it.
Yes.
So that, you got to take that out of that number because that's on us regardless. If we're going to develop it, we can't develop it without getting rid of the asbestos.
Of course.
So we're still going to spend that money regardless.
Yeah.
So what I guess what I don't understand is how can we justify spending possibly $3 million and having a property that's only worth a third of that when we get done?
Because it's, the idea is that we don't want to have the property.
Well,
Typically, when you do these types of projects.
I'm going to echo what
$800,000
Rosalind
to
said.
spend on it.
I'm going to echo what
However we want.
Rosalind said.
Yeah.
We cannot, as a city, be the landholder for this
I
and the
agree.
developer for this.
That's to answer Mr. Decker's question, how do we become landowners? That's how the city becomes landowners. People walked out and left them,
Yes.
and we tried to take it up. Sorry, we can't do it. If that building was that attractive for development, somebody would already be doing it.
It's not that it's not attractive for developers. Right now, we have talked to several developers. There are developers that are all doing developments right now. They're just not available.
Well, if there's developers out there that want to come along and would partner with us, fine. But I don't think we need to spend the money that we haven't got.
Yes. We have a report due to this date on April 12th. So I'm hoping that, yeah. But I just want you guys to be aware, if we end up taking them down, it's probably going to be $500,000 to $700,000. I mean, and you're going to have 3 vacant lots that are worth very little. I'm not saying somebody can't build on them, but that's what you're going to have.
And also a little bit of a tarnished reputation with IEDA.
Right.
Well, realistically, they're not worth much right now. I mean, if we're really going to be honest about it, they're not worth much now. We can't give them away. That's the thing is I'd like to just, hey, it's yours, take it. We can't find a developer that wants it. So now we're going to spend $3 million.
Well, I don't think, we're not ever talking about spending money to develop it.
No.
That was an option presented to us
Well, I'm saying though, at a previous meeting, we discussed if we were going to develop them, we were going to try to get a loan for $3 million to
No,
develop
no,
them.
no,
And
no.
then after we spend all this money, we're going to hope a developer comes in and buys it from us at a third of that market value.
So the monies that we have, realistically, the money that we have, without having to send anything back, can we remove the asbestos, fix the facades so they look decent, stabilize the building and take off the back part that needs to be done, and at least make it look good, and then try to sell them? And if they don't get sold, then, maybe I'll be dead and gone before they fall again, but, I don't know. We don't want to send the money back if we don't have to, but we don't want them to stay the way they are. So maybe they'd look more promising to somebody if that much was done.
Well, the 600,000, if you don't do the upper story housing, goes back.
It goes back,
Yeah,
okay.
we cannot use that funding.
So what's that leave us?
The $100,000 of the facade, if they'll allow us to use it for that. The grant application discussed housing for it, when we submitted that. And then the 200,000 of ARPA funds.
So actually about 100,000 apiece, close to.
Yeah, the one problem with the asbestos removal is that the majority of the asbestos is in the roofs.
Yeah.
And so if we, the asbestos removal is taking off the roof, it's not putting anything back on. So there actually has to be either some money put back into a new roof or having a developer ready to go when we remove the roof.
But in all actuality, if we decided to demo, we have 300,000. We don't even have 300,000 to demo.
No, we have 200,000 to
We
do.
have 200,000 to demo, which is not going to get us very far. And I don't think people understand the background of it all, Those aren't the only 3 buildings that were left there. There were 4 across the street and left by people and walked away, and the city has taken a lot of time and a lot of money to clean up that area and get rid of those. One actually fell down. Well, the two on the corner, the hearth and the building next to it. So there's been a significant amount of money spent in those areas. But I don't know. We're going to have to figure out what's the best for the city of Keokuk, and we knew that really quick.
Well,
I
I
also like
think,
to add that these would be 20 approximately, the developer approximated 20 workforce housing, no income market rate apartments.
You said low income market?
No, no income
No
restriction.
income, okay.
20 market rate apartments, high end. Currently, we don't have much of that in Keokuk.
Okay.
so if the council is okay with me reaching out to the developer to see if they would be interested in a public-private partnership, I can do that. Correct.
Obviously, the goal is for us to not be involved at all.
Right.
That was
Cole, do you have any idea when the earmark money,
So we applied for an earmark for the 600 block. The Congress is supposed to have that all in place by October 1, because that's when their financial fiscal year starts. The problem is that the earmark that we got this year, the budget wasn't improved until December 29th. So you are looking to probably again until at least December, if not further, depending upon how politics go in Washington, of getting that approved.
But I
So,
thought that
but-
earmark was only for 629
No, the earmark was for all 4 buildings.
for all 4 buildings.
Yes.
So what I would say is let's keep on talking to the developer. He's probably going to give us 3 more things that he wants us to do some research on to keep on moving this forward, and then hopefully get them to the finish line here before too long.
Okay, anybody else? With all that being said, it's time to go home. Meeting adjourned.
I did told it to go ahead and do the update. You're welcome. There's still 35 seconds.
I don't blame her. I wouldn't be either.
Well, then scratch off.
Did you?